Hi everybody, welcome again to another episode of TaylorMade Talk. I'm here again with Rodney, Daniel, and his dog Mattis. A couple months ago we did a video on context, and after watching it and thinking about it for a couple months, we both kind of looked at it, and while it spoke really well to some of the trainers within our system, I don't think it covered everybody or as big of an audience as we wanted it to. So we're going to go back over and kind of cover some details on context and more specifics on what we're talking about, and also give you some examples today. So that's what we're going to be hitting on now. So we're going to go over some stuff with Mattis on context, and we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to talk about the behavior of sit, and we're just going to use that as an example. You can insert any behavior into this and kind of apply it to what we're talking about in context. But everybody kind of understands sit, and so we're going to use that, and it's a simplex behavior. And everybody thinks their dog, not everybody, but a lot of people thinks their dog knows sit. So we're going to kind of go into how we can use sit in a lot of different contexts, and how some of the things are going to be very simple for Mattis to understand sit, but how we can just very simply change the context and make sit a very complicated behavior all over again. So that's kind of the big question that when I get a lot of people, and I ask them, does your dog know sit? Or whatever, and everybody thinks, of course he knows sit. Every time I get the food bowl out, I make him sit before he eats, or something of that sort. That doesn't necessarily mean the dog knows sit. He understands the context of the situation, means he puts his butt on the ground and he gets his bowl of food. So here we're going to kind of go into the more dynamics of how you have to train things within context and apply as many different contexts as possible before your behavior is really, truly solid. We're going to give a couple examples with Mattis doing sit, and kind of show you the different contexts which he knows it in and which he doesn't know it in. So I'll turn it over to Rodney and let him work his dog.
Sit. Good boy.
Clearly Mattis has sit while sitting in front of you. Especially if he gets a food reward, he's really happy about that.
Okay.
So, next thing he's going to do is just going to kind of move him around a little bit, and at random sit him while he's outstretched on a leash, just moving. You see how this one's a lot harder for him. He did do it, but he was a little slower about it, and he also even kind of came back to the front position in order to do that. Move him around again and see if he'll try it one more time.
Okay.
See if he gets a little better at it the second time.
Good boy.
Just a random sit thrown in there.
Sit.
While moving, he did. And that's good again.
Okay. Good boy. Sit.
The other context is Rodney's stopping. So that's kind of signaling the dog too. When he stops, he sits. He does that when he's heeling. So he has sit though on cue again. You can reward him anytime you want as well. That's no problem. Just moving around again, and as you're still moving, tell him to sit. Just keep moving. Rodney's not going to tell him while he's still moving. See if that changes the context. One of the things you notice that Mattis does every time is he kind of comes back to front and sits. Every time. So he certainly has the context of sitting, coming back to front, but not just dropping his butt the second he says sit.
Good boy.
Don't sit while you keep moving right there. Just
sit.
Keep moving. Now we don't have much of anything. He did it after Rodney stopped, if you noticed. But he didn't when he did it. Do it heeling away so you have a good angle on the camera so you can see it.
Sit.
We told him sit. Mattis is not sitting. No sit. So no sit at a motion is what we do. Like in a IPO sport or Schutzen, we have a sit at a motion. In this case, Rodney's done a lot of pet dog type training with Mattis, and he doesn't have a sit at a motion. He does have a sit when we stop and sit. So that's the context of what we're talking about. One of the things then he'll have to work on is like sitting even while in motion. Or what's kind of cool is let's like show him another example. We'll sit Mattis down over there. We're going to recall him and sit him on his way to the recall and see if he stops and sits. Try that.
Okay. Good boy.
That's probably good right about there. Here's another context thing. The ground out there is hot. We cooled the ground down here, but we'll get a little bit closer. He'll sit there, no problem. We'll have him come, and after, let's say like right around where he gets to me, tell him to sit. And my guess is he's gonna keep on coming to Rodney and then sit in front of him.
Okay, sit.
Seen this before, I guess. So that's kind of the thing we're talking about, context. And for me, when my dog Gordon that I worked with a lot, one of the things that I thought was really neat that we did, and one of the ways that I tried to make the context to sit in so many different ways, is I would down him in a quite a far distance recall him, and then in the middle of that tell him sit. And actually I would do it typically in like ball play. So I'd throw a ball way out in the field, he'd get the ball, be coming back in the middle of that, I'd tell him sit, and he'd stop, drop his butt and sit. And so that's what we're kind of like looking at. And to me, like, that's one of the most difficult challenges you could teach a dog to do, is like drop them at a distance. A lot of people can do down. Down's a difficult thing, but it's not so difficult. It's one of the easier ones. Sit is extremely difficult. And the one that I would think would be the hardest is to stop them at a stay. And that's at a distance away from you. It's one thing doing a stay at a motion or a stand at a motion, where you're running next to them and tell them stay and they stand. A lot of IPO dogs, especially anything 2 and IPO 2 and IPO 3 and up, are able to do. That's something that's standard in it. It's part of the test. But it's another thing for a dog to do it at a distance, like coming to you or coming back after getting a ball and stopping right there on the spot and staying in a stand. So those are like different things of context. Though a lot of dogs can do a stand at a motion, or a stand even standing right next to them, where you do a sit down stand or an exercise like that. But it's another thing making them come back from there. Like I said, you can incorporate this into any behavior and change the context up. And so, do you really have shake, or do you really have sit, or do you really have down, or do you really have whatever it may be that you want to put in there? Do you have that in all contexts? And so the thing is, to me, it's not just training a behavior for something, but it's training the behavior in as many different contexts as possible. And so that's what we mean if you go back and watch that video, that's what we're really talking about, the details of context, and how context is really, for me, is everything. So Mattis working on his roll over and back scratch right now, which he's got down pat in any context. Anyhow, so if you like what you saw today, subscribe to us here on YouTube. You can also follow our social media at TaylorMade Working Dogs, or visit our website, www.taylormadeworkingdogs.com, or you can email us your questions, comments, concerns, anything, info@tmwdogs.com. Thanks a lot for watching.
Good boy.